Y'all, I'm trying to hide from my goats this morning. Yesterday, we moved Mac away from Mercy and Pearl and in with the boys because he started to show some romantic interests in his close relations, and we had to nip that in the bud. And he's been screaming, and it's like, I feel bad. Like, I feel bad that they screamed for each other all day yesterday, but the alternative is leave them together and risk the girls getting pregnant way too young and having babies dying. So obviously it's not being dramatic to take them away. So I came down to have my coffee in the garden this morning. Kind of been having a group effort around here to get this cleaned up and ready to hand over. So as a little update, we are 19 days away from our stuff moving. So we're shipping our stuff in pods, not everything. Some things we're storing in my dad's workshop because there's some furniture that won't fit in the mobile home that we got. It's a pretty good sized mobile home, but I need to like put bunk beds in it for my kids, and the furniture that they have here is not going to work there. And so there's some furniture that we're storing at my dad's, and we'll just come back, like when we come back for a holiday or something, we'll just bring a trailer and bring all that furniture back once we have a workshop or somewhere to store it there. And our house that we're going to build in the future is underway, because that's basically what we're saving that for. It's like, a lot of that is furniture that Maya built when we were first married and stuff like that. So I don't want to get rid of it, but I really don't have a place to put it right now. But all our stuff is leaving here in 19 days, and then we're gonna go stay at my dad's house. But in between now and then, I've actually got a trip to South Carolina planned. So I mentioned this the other day and I had a lot of questions. Our family is blended. We have 6 kids between us. Malia, our daughter, she came from Jeremiah's first marriage, and she's turning 16 this month, and so she's with us on summers and holidays. And so she's not seen our property in South Carolina, because when we took our trip out there as a family in April, she obviously wasn't with us during that time. So we want to make a trip out there and kind of let her see it, as well as be there whenever they deliver our mobile home. So although I have 19 days left to call this home, a handful of those I won't be here. So I'm literally like down to counting the mornings that are left, and they're not many. So I told you guys the other day that I was starting to feel my heart shift away from here. I'm starting to like feel this anticipation for what's next and an excitement for it. Oh, look at this beauty. Hello, Gabriel. Hey, Gabe. And it is true that I'm feeling that shifting, but I am still coming out and enjoying the garden. It's still a beautiful garden, even though I am really just wrapping my heart around the fact that I'm handing this garden over to my friend Jill with Spring Willow Farm. They're buying our property, and I'm glad to give her something so amazing and so beautiful, but I still enjoy being down here. And it is becoming less bitter and more sweet the closer that we get to the move and the transition, because I'm so ready to start on what's next for us. Oh my goodness. Okay, so this tomato plant's so wild. I'm gonna grab a few of these little guys. This is I think it's called spoon or teaspoon. I think sometimes it's called post office spoon variety of tomato, and they're like really tiny. And I don't think that I have talked about these at all this year. I know I've talked about them in years past. My first experience with these little tomatoes was before they were really commonly carried in seed catalogs. I know Baker Creek introduced them, I think, last year, and I've been seeing them pop up in different seed companies. But I don't know, it's probably been like 4 or 5 years ago. A friend I met on Instagram, who was like a collector of rare seeds, sent me some seeds for these. And I've been growing them since then. They're really neat plants. You can tell that they're kind of wild, like they just grow super wild. I don't usually prune them. I usually just kind of try to hold them up. They don't have the fuzziness on the branches that other tomatoes have. They're really, really smooth. Their leaves are really small. And these tomatoes are tiny. These are not super great for cooking so much. I mean, I'm sure you could use them, but they're just really tiny. But they have so much flavor. They're probably one of my most favorites in the garden to just snack on, because they're like these tiny little things that they just explode with flavor. I do think that it would be kind of cool, and I've thought this before, probably won't do it this year. If anybody wants to take a stab at it, let me know how it goes. But I do think that it would be kind of cool to maybe do some sort of baking with them, because they are so small. I think that they would get kind of jammy pretty easily if they were baked, you know, like a good steady heat to caramelize the sugars in them. And I'm thinking it might be cool to do like a caramelized onion and little tomato, or perhaps like a tomato and herb scone or something like that that could like really be savory. So I've thought that before with these, because I mean they're the size of blueberries, or smaller than blueberries in some cases. Like look, this one is teeny tiny. They're so good. If anybody decides to bake something lovely with these, let me know. Oh, I just remembered something I was gonna finish doing. Oh, girl. Oh, look at this. Jill's gonna have a banana tree after all. Isn't that exciting? I haven't told her yet. I thought that the really cold winter we had done them off, because usually they are well established by now. But I'm excited to see that coming up. Maybe some others will end up coming up too. I don't know the variety of banana plants that I've had out here. I got the first one from my mom a long time ago, and they always come back every year. But we had such a hard winter. I mean, I think our lowest low this last winter was -5 Fahrenheit, -20 Celsius. So, I mean, it was pretty cold, and we got like 18 inches of snow or something like that. And I've been told the snow probably helped by insulating, because snow kind of does create a blanket and hold in some warmth. But these banana trees are usually they're usually 3 or 4 feet tall by July, and that one's just barely poking out, but it'll be okay. It'll grow pretty quick. It'll end up getting tall by the frost. Look at that little lady. Look at her. I actually fully approve of her placement there on the fence. What a good place for her, where I'm not gonna stick my hand in her web. So I love my garden spiders. And when I talk to new gardeners, often they're like, oh, I can't handle the creepy crawlies. I can't handle spiders. I can't handle seeing snakes. And while I don't want to touch them, I don't want to snuggle. I'm always glad to see them. Sometimes the snakes will like take me back a little bit, like they'll kind of frighten me for a second until I get a good look at them. And once I see that it's like a garden snake or a rat snake, I always leave them alone, because the spiders and the snakes and all of that, they're just part of this ecosystem, which I want to have a full and healthy ecosystem, because that's how you have a healthy organic garden. Now my garden spider population is pretty intense. I remember I shared the story recently about, you know, the first garden spider I'd ever seen, and how it was gone the morning after spraying my garden. And that was really kind of the deciding moment for me that morning, that I was not going to spray my garden with poison anymore. I was going to be an organic gardener. Of course, that's been years ago, and now our garden spider population is extremely healthy. We had a few last year that kind of set up their webs right outside the windows of our living room, real up high. And every morning the kids would come out and watch what they'd caught in their web. It was really, really neat. They really are very beneficial though, and now that I have them, they set up all down the tomato rows. They catch a lot of the moths and the different critters that lay their eggs on the tomato plants that in the larval stage eat up tomato plants. And so it's just really interesting. They're actually big helpers in the garden. So I just give them their space, try not to stick my hand in their business, and I'm always glad when I see them on the fence lines like that, because they can do their job there and there's no way that I'm gonna accidentally run into them. All right, so I actually have a job over here to finish that I can finish while I drink my coffee. I already planted down here So this is where the green beans were, and down there is where the peas were. And actually some of these green beans that I'd left out here and dried up, we just dropped them on the ground. And I've been opening these and replanting these beans along this row. And I was in the middle of doing it yesterday on that row when like a super heavy rain just came upon me real quick. And I actually don't mind getting a little wet while I'm gardening, but it was a very heavy rain and I had Bear out here with me. And when he gets wet, he takes like all day to dry, so we ran inside. So these beans dried up on the vine and they dropped, and so they're fine to plant. They're fully dry. The beans are hard inside because they're fully dried. So this mature seed and it'll grow. And I'm putting these in for Jill because, I mean, they're moving in, starting to move their stuff the end of this month and into the beginning of next month, and I'm trying to get a lot of the spaces clean so she can come in and plant as soon as she gets here, and maybe even a little bit before she gets here. But I told her I would replant these beans because beans only take like 50 days to get to fruition, and if I go ahead and plant them now, that means she'll be harvesting like a month after she moves in, whereas if she has to wait till she moves in to plant them, it'll be 2 months. So give her a little head start, might as well, right? Bear, are you a helpful gardener? Y'all look at this. Kajari melons. I got a few on here that I can see. Pretty excited about that. I don't think I'm gonna get to eat them though. Maybe something will ripen up in the next few weeks, but I don't think so. They don't look close enough. They're still not even full size. This is also the time of year that I start getting lots of messages from new gardeners with pictures of their unripe melons and green tomatoes being like, I thought I was close, but what, you know, like how long is this gonna take? And the answer is much longer than you'd like. So with things like cucumbers and squash, you can start harvesting those even when they're still really small. So you can harvest a really small squash and eat it. In fact, it'll probably be more sweet and tender than if you wait until it gets larger. And there is a point where they just keep growing, keep growing, keep growing. They start hardening and the skin starts getting tough and the seeds start getting large, and that's how squashes and cucumbers are. So like a fully ripened and mature cucumber turns yellow in a lot of cases. They get real big, their skin gets harder, their seeds get bigger. So you want to harvest those small when the inside is still tender. With tomatoes, with things like melons, you want those to ripen because that's where you're gonna get all that flavor and that sweetness. This aisle is so wild and beautiful. Look at this corn. You go corn. Look at this. Brings me joy. So here are some green tomatoes, and what these will do is they'll get to the size that they're going to be, and then they just stay like that for like a maddeningly long time. Sometimes, let's see, if you put your plant in the ground and it sets fruit, I want to say it takes about as long for it to grow to full size. So let's say as soon as this flower sets fruit, it takes 3 weeks for it to get to this size, or 4 weeks, or whatever it's gonna be. And then it takes about the same amount of time for it to ripen. So it'll sit on the vine green for probably a few weeks before you'll come out one day and you'll see what's called a blush. So these are just not fully ripe, but beginning to blush. And it's when they first start changing colors. This is technically a blushing tomato right there. You can kind of see it's just a different shade of green. And then they start to ripen. Do y'all like how I'm out here in the garden giving you guys tomato tips instead of inside packing my house to move in 19 days? Jeremiah's gonna think that's super cute. So the blushing tomatoes, as soon as they begin to produce that chemical that ripens them, where you see that blush, this is like an extremely argued point in the garden, because there are people that will fight you on the fact that tomatoes have to become fully ripe on the vine to be good. And that's not entirely true. So once a tomato begins producing that gas that creates ripening, if you remove that from the vine, it will continue to produce that gas. So you can take a blushing tomato or a slightly ripening tomato and you can pull it off and you can go put it on your kitchen windowsill and it will continue to ripen. If you pull it green, it will change colors, but it will not have the same flavor because it's not producing the same chemicals as it would had it been left on the plant until blush. Now, there is the argument that tomatoes that come to ripeness and are picked when it's hot outside, when they've been allowed to dry out, you're gonna get that concentration of the sugars. You're gonna get a richer flavor if you pick a tomato like in the optimum conditions. But I would argue to say, if you've got a bad pest problem, if you've got squirrels, if you've got something that's coming and eating part of your fruit and ruining it, because as soon as it starts producing that chemical that ripens it, it begins producing smells and flavors that make things want to eat it. And it's all part of the design to spread the seeds from the plant. But if you're having a big issue and you're not getting your ripe tomatoes, because as soon as they start ripening, something's eating them, just pull them when they first start ripening, because a tomato that ripened in the house is gonna be better than a tomato that's half eaten by a squirrel. There's my common sense piece of advice for the day. And while I can see allowing a tomato to stay on the plant to ripen as fully as possible to get the best flavor in the best conditions, picking in the afternoon, letting it dry out for a couple of days, I can say yes, that is very good. That is for the best flavor, that you're gonna get the best flavor. But let's say there's a rainstorm coming and you're about to get multiple inches of rain and your tomato's not fully ripe. I will pick it at that point and let it ripen inside rather than let it get seriously diluted by the rain and potentially have its skin split by the rain. Because again, to me, the tomato that finished ripening in the house is still better than one that could potentially be ruined outside. And if it takes on a bunch of water, the flavor's not going to be as good as it could be anyway. I've done so much gardening in the mornings the last few days because I feel like I don't want to waste a single day not enjoying my morning coffee out here, not enjoying my last days in this garden. But I cannot be in the garden without messing with stuff, you know, like pruning and tying things up and deadheading. Just this is me. It's like gardening while I drink my coffee. That's why I always tell you guys every garden needs a chair, and to, you know, drink your morning coffee in your garden, drink your evening tea in your garden, whatever it is that you do, like incorporate your wind down time into your garden space, because just being in your garden, I mean, you'll love it, and making it a place of rest and making it a place of refuge, it does something to your heart to connect you to this place, and you'll just have a better garden for it. So I am almost out of coffee, and I do have a long list of things to get packed today. 19 days is not very long. Thank you guys for hanging out with me this morning. I bless you. Until next time.